Last month, I signed an executive directive.
Governor's on the TV.
A COVID-19 workplace safety within the department.
Gov's on the 2. We're not watching the Gov.
We're now having
Gov.
to get back to business, but it's going to be not business as usual. It's going to look a little bit different because we still have to figure out how to live with COVID-19.
Not watching your bullshit, Gov. So there's 2 videos I'm going to watch, and that's about all I'm going to do. Okay, some videos on TV I want to watch. I'm going to watch them and do a video, guys. So here we go. I wish I was on TV right now.
Every day.
Didn't watch that. Now some odd stuff we're going to watch. Hmm. I don't know. What sounds good to watch, huh? Yeah, Doug Mirror sounds like a good idea.
We're a different breed, aren't we?
I'll be right back, guys. I have to put something in the fridge.
This is a Pagani Huayra, and it is, quite simply, one of the coolest cars ever made. And that's obvious the moment you first take a look at it. Yes, this one is worth something close to $3 million, but it is also simply stunning. And as you go through the details and the cool quirks and features, it becomes even more stunning. Today, I'm going to do just that. First, a little overview, and I'm going to start with Pagani, the company. Now, Pagani was founded by Horacio Pagani, who worked for Lamborghini but left in the 1990s in order to start his own firm. Pagani's first car came out in 1999. It was called the Zonda, and it debuted to widespread acclaim for its crazy styling and its insane performance.
And then came the Wyra. This car came out in 2011, 2012. This particular one is a 2014 model, and it was updated in 2016 with the Tempesta package. Pagani Wyra Tempesta. It's a special name for a special car, and indeed this is a very special car. It uses a turbocharged V12 borrowed from Mercedes-AMG with 750 horsepower and 740 pound-feet of torque. It'll do 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds, and you'll have a top speed of around 240 miles an hour, which makes it one of the fastest cars on the planet. Pagani made only 100 coupe models like this one for the entire world. These days, production has stopped, and they're now making an open-top Wyra Roadster version. When this car was new back in 2014, the original sticker price was just under $2 million, but these days, the market price of this car is hovering just below $3 million.
Watch
I
NASCAR.
borrowed this Wyra.
I want to.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll do that too. Here, I'm gonna watch that. I'm gonna watch NASCAR, guys, in a little bit.
Okay. Screen right now, and you totally should follow him on Instagram because I mean, the man's got a Pagani Wyra, so you know.
Any Pagani's hard to come by in the U.S. because aren't they like?
And he said, "Hey, why don't you come up and film a video with my Pagani?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so here I am. Anyway, today I'm going to show you around the Wyra, and I'm going to show you all of the interesting quirks and cool features of one of the most amazing cars in existence. Then I'm going to get it out on the road and drive it, and then I'm going to give it a Doug score. And for more of my thoughts on the Wyra, click the link below to visit autotrader.com/oversteer, where I've also compiled a list of the most expensive cars currently listed for sale on AutoTrader.
Satisfaction. It doesn't just happen. You make it happen with the little things you do and the choices you make.
Now I'm going to start the quirks and features with my favorite quirk of this entire car, and that would be the key. First off, this is the key. Yes, that's right. This is what the key looks like. It is an aluminum piece in the shape of a car. Not just any car, of course, in the shape of a Wyra. And you'll notice that there aren't any, key things on it. Well, you see, the key is more than just what meets the eye at first.
Yeah, we're gonna watch NASCAR.
Back in turn one, so it's Bonnet, Allison.
And our individual motivation is what gets us up to the front.
In a departure from traditional NASCAR qualifying procedure, drivers have the opportunity to better their Friday best with a Saturday session. Friday's top 10 showed Neil Bonnet with quick time in the Valvoline Pontiac over Bobby Allison with Aussie Alan Grice third. Fourth quick was Chad Little, fifth Californian Ron Esau, then Australian Robin Betts from Bob Howard, Dave Marcus, Glenn Stewart, and Gary Collins. Goodyear sweetened the pole shootout with $10,000. That was all the incentive the drivers needed to turn up the week. First to respond was Tasmanian Robin Best, who got a perfect lap in the number 88 Monte Carlo. He shaved almost a full second from Friday's qualifying run, jumping 2 spots and into the second row. Not so fortunate was NASCAR veteran Dave Marcus in the 71 Chevrolet. He was 8th quick on Friday, but this wild side put pay to his chances, and he was bumped 7 positions. Alan Grice, the sentimental Australian favourite in the Foster's Oldsmobile, did not let down his supporters. He charged around the one.
Usually Ford and Holden.
0.971 seconds to bump Bobby Allison off the front row.
Well, we're going back to the setup we had on Thursday. Friday was very hot, as you know, and we lost our car.
Not going okay.
More than half a second.
The cats in the house usually see that gun.
The setup is sort of temperature, if you like, and that's brought the speed back to the car.
Allison responded quickly to the challenge. Down the number 12, he went deep into the first corner to set up an ideal entry to the back straight. From there, it was plain sailing. A lap of 28.847 seconds, and Grice was back to the second row. However, the best on the day was delivered by Neil Bonnet in the Raybok Pontiac. He also took the car deep into the first turn and never lifted off the throttle. setting up the fastest time of the day. 38.829 seconds, marginally slower than his Friday mark, but $10,000 richer from Goodyear and the Park Royal pole for today's NASCAR 500.
Boy, it feels good. You know, we brought a good race car over here, and we thought we'd be in good shape. But boy, Bobby put us to work today. He's right there with us. We beat him like a couple of hundredths of a second. And Alan Grice really picked up today. We're going to have our work cut out for us come Sunday.
So here's how the top 10 will line up for today's Goodyear 500. Pole to Neil Bonnet and the Gl&Oa&Lt&M.
Okay, so two people we actually know are in top K.
Row 2 is the Aussie connection. Grice from 3 and Robin Best from 4. Position 5 is Californian Ron Esau. 6, David Sosby in the Ford. 7, Chicago's Bill Venturini. 8, the Medicare Master, 60-year-old Herschel McGriff. 9 is Gary Collins in an Oldsmobile. And 10, Summer McKnight's Thunderbird.
I'm standing down here on pit road, and the pits are going to be a very important place today. This is Neil Bonnet's pit. He's on the pole. 3 sets of tires here at $170 a piece. They expect to use those. If things go green all day long, he'll stop at every 80 laps. But that's likely not to happen. Yellow flags, they come in to make adjustments to tune the car. The pits will be an important place, and we'll be here to report.
Bob Jane at this moment.
Wow, kangaroo.
Down. And I think it's only fitting that Bob Jane will give the signal, the starting command for the cars to come out on the racetrack. The 280 circuits here today that constitutes 500 kilometres, the Goodyear 500.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
The 2 winners of the NASCAR circuit this year, pole sitter, Neil Bonnet, winner of the Richmond 400 last weekend, and on the outside of the front row, Bobby Allison, who of course won the Daytona 500 a fortnight ago. Pace car might be just about ready to head to pit lane.
Pace car being driven by John Harvey.
Yes, and the pace car comes off the racetrack, and we're about set for the start. Under the control of Bill Gazaway of NASCAR, the field comes down for the start. It'll be a slow one, obviously, and it's Bonnet on the inside, and Bonnet will get the jump. Bonnet is away. Bobby Allison trails. Alan Grice did not miss the start. He moves up very quick with the Robin, and the Robin Best, in fact, was very, very slow to get away. Bonnet will lead them through turn number 1.
I really want to do a Monday.
The back straight clear of Bobby Allison. Alan Grice starting to pick them up as they head down there. Robin Best is the next one to go through. Sosby also well positioned. So too is Brad Knopfstiger. Watch the work that they turns now as they come into the completion of the first lap. And Alan Grice already up and making a challenge on Bobby Allison. Down through the triangle. The crowd has gone berserk here as Grice goes down the end.
We love the new apartment.
There is a bit of a clogging problem.
It's just ridiculous.
At least Geico makes it easy to bundle our renters and car insurance.
I would see those assholes saying, "Stop doing clogs. You guys are pissing me off. Stop clogging." That's what I tell them to do.
Annually, he won out scores in 1978. He's actually had 45 races without a score.
The crowds are still gathering for the $230,000 11th line of the
I don't know what I'm doing, guys. I'm just killing time. That's what I'm doing.
Sewing with Benny will not be seen at this time, so that we may bring you a show that is...
Okay, I'm going to finish up the archives. I never actually watched them all in order, so I'm on episode 4.
Sewing with Benny will not be seen
Actually.
at this time, so that we may bring you a show that is truly...
Oh, shoot. I hate wearing a damn thing. Wish I had a globe. do a video. This is America, right? I think so. This is okay. This is this is Venus. This is Venus.
Welcome to the Oddity Archive, the show that's...
I know I've seen this show before. You've been rickrolled. You've been rickrolled.
Yes, I just did.
Who the hell? Oh, Dr. Evil.
TV is truly a lost art. This used to be the place where almost any schmuck could get his 15 minutes. It was so pervasive in American culture at one point that you had shows like SCTV and Fernwood Tonight, whose sole existence was to mock the nature of local television.
We still have that on here. We still have those around here.
Is unwittingly carrying on the tradition. This being one of those shows, well, I want to get back to our roots.
Actually, that is true, guys. Actually, there is still some local TV stations still around, okay? Like Channel 8. They still have local TV shows. I hate clowns.
For decades, it seemed like every market had their own kiddie clown show.
We did it one time here in the 70s or 80s, I think here we did.
And he had a show called Blinky's Fun Club, which in reality wasn't all that much fun. Like any good level-headed kid, Blinky scared the living bejesus out of me.
Or two,
However,
but
in retrospect, like any good level-headed adult, he doesn't seem quite as scary now. He was, like most of these hosts, not particularly funny, even by elementary school-age standards. Conversely, he was unlike most clowns in that he was continually extolling the virtues of family values and tolerance. Still didn't make it funny, though.
Good morning. Why did you tell me? You didn't. Didn't tell me. You didn't tell me. You were just like, good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning, dear children. Good morning to you.
I'm sure the viewers of the Rocky Mountain region are still absolutely heartbroken at the fact that I declined an invitation to sit in on a taping of Blinky's back in 1992.
lucky.
I stand by my decision. One last
I had a chance too, but I turned it down. It wasn't Colorado. It was a state thing. In South Bend.
Bought some sheet music from the man himself and walked right out the door without realizing who he was. I was soon informed of who he was, and ambulances had to be called to the scene. It wasn't pretty. Did I mention the place was called Blinky's Antiques?
That makes sense.
You know, I'm feeling good and nostalgic now. Why don't we watch a little bit of this?
Okay.
I don't remember this.
Oh, there's a camera window.
I just realized it's the puppet that's supposed to be singing.
I'm going back here. I'll get you back in.
I don't remember this. Okay, I remember this. This is it.
Mom said we had to wait or we don't get any presents.
Birthday? Oh, I forgot he had a speech impediment. You know, this is exactly why I refuse to appear on the show.
Can you?
You know what? I'm still deathly afraid of this guy.
One TV, that's two.
I realized that something like Bozo the Clown was actually a franchise. I mean, there were multiple Bozos throughout the country. But a lot of markets simply couldn't afford something like that, so they just had to come up with their own show. And that's how you wound up with stuff like Ho-Ho the Clown. High noon. Hey, get the dog off the set! Get that damn dog off the set!
It's right over there. You better come and get this back. Come on, get the ball. Huh? Okay, where do you go with it? Right in the doghouse. In the doghouse.
Stupid human. Well, he dresses up his socks and talks to them. That's a good indicator of his mental health. He does know the camera's on, right?
Get on with it.
12 o'clock, every day. Monday through Friday at 12 o'clock. We'd like to invite you to have lunch with Ho Ho. We'll have an apple.
Imagine it's fun.
Some
Some
cookies,
abuse,
lots of
fun,
cartoons,
fun.
someday even a pie.
Tears.
Local TV brought us all those wonderful horror movie hosts. You know, the ones who knew the movies were absolute crap. I mean, you got Vampira, and Gl&Oa&Lt&M.
Gl&Oa&Lt plays nothing but poker. See, what you do in poker, you get a girl, and you poke her.
And,
Hello, darling. It's me.
well, I think we all know who she is. And you got Sven Gulli. You know, let's talk Sven for a moment here. We'll go on a Sven streak. Take a trip to Sven 11. Suffer a case of Sven stroke. Sven Gulli started his Screaming Yellow Theater in the early 70s.
Okay, Channel 4.
Sven Gulli, played by Rich Coase, who was one of the original Screaming Yellow writers. Though he ultimately dropped the son of sobriquet after Sven Sr. gave his blessing. This guy is great. He's smart, funny, versatile, and the movies he showed tended to not suck as much as the other hosts. He also managed to put Berwyn, Illinois on the map. Sorry, couldn't resist. Let's watch a little.
Okay, I found those up for the. Okay, I might want to know what episode it was on. What did I find?
Cancel. You can't cancel this. This is the first good show I've seen on this freaking episode. This is bullshit.
Alright, let's see what else we can find.
Sven Gulli's all right, I think. Why do Sven Gulli was good? What the fuck is this?
Calls himself Count Scary. Yeah, I'm scared. of
What is this? What is
How
this?
stupid this is. Where's my wooden stake?
What did you find the sunlight?
I guess the remote will just have to do.
I turn AC on because I'm just enjoying this getting too hot in this house. I want to get the cats in the house.
Calls himself Sammy Terry, and for the life of me, I don't know why. Quick. I can't understand a word you say. Sammy Terry.
Ghosting.
Cemetery. Oh, that's lame. We'll be right back.
Hello there, little vibration between Sandy Leo.
Day by day. Day by day. Oh, Lord.
I felt sorry for that guy right there in the middle. He has stuff to mess with.
Stirring sounds of the vibrations, nightly at the Imperial House Motel, Gl&Oa&Lt&M Road at I-75.
I-75? That's the bridge, you silly. The Mackinac Bridge.
The city of Chicago has a truly rich history of local television.
Yeah.
Running the gamut from pioneering children's shows to Oprah frickin' Winfrey herself.
Good old Oprah. She's around for years.
Yeah, him too.
How long has Oprah been on for?
On our show, we talk about those, but well, where's the fun in that? So what do we got here? Okay, I can see this. Like an American bandstand for kids.
Yes.
That makes sense. Same hot dance steps.
How many seasons did Oprah Winfrey do?
Hey kids, it's time to play Wolf Queen's Kitty Alco.
Is this a game show? I thought this was American
Hey.
Bandstand Junior.
How many seasons did Oprah Winfrey do?
Juicy and completely detached.
25 seasons.
And
According to
Wow.
Wikipedia, The Oprah Winfrey Show, often referred to as The Oprah Show or simply Oprah, is an American daytime syndicated talk show that aired nationally for 25 seasons from September 8, 1986 to May 25, 2011, in Chicago, Illinois.
I get it.
How many seasons has Dr. Phil done so far?
I'm no mythology expert or anything, but doesn't
Here is information from Wikipedia.
Evil spirits.
Wow, 2,000 episodes right now. He's on season 17.
Oh, never mind. I think she knew. You know, I know this was 1969 and all, but a mic around the neck? How about a boom, cheapskate?
The booms back then. Okay, now a boom back then really didn't work that well. Booms were not working. Besides,
You know, I like the new Colony 6 and all, but this just might not be worth it.
if they had a headset, that'd be nice too.
Okay, I'm out here.
Good. There's actually a kitchen near where I used to live before my time. Oh, this show sucks.
I should be dancing.
This show still exists. They just renamed it. This show still exists.
Play a 12-bar blues.
This show still exists. They just changed it and renamed it. This show still exists. It's funny though. This show still exists. Thing is, they renamed it.
I'm calling bullshit on this one. She's playing piano all right, but that band is just a tape.
I bet. You guys suck. The Goody Goo show.
Toy piano down the stairs.
They made this show recently called Robbie's Whatever House, and he's an idiot. It's just him and his father and his mom being idiots.
This isn't the Mike Douglas show.
That'd be a lot better than watching this crap. The Jenny Crew show? That's so stupid. This show sucked a bit. Want to watch that crap? I'd go somewhere else.
Time is right time.
It's more like 12:56 to me.
That writes with the greatest of ease. Not in all
Used in the finer bus and train station restrooms throughout the Chicagoland area.
slim, quick.
Ah, the godless bears are attacking!
Writes fine, medium, or bold. Don't just ask for
Oh, it's nice to know that.
29 cents for a pen.
Back then.
9 cents everywhere. There is a world of difference.
$29 to $1 for a pen.
Of the famous sign pen.
That's not a bad price.
Nice documents.
I can get one for 29 cents. You can get four for $1.
The Fisher Space Pen. It writes in space.
You don't say.
Fisher Space Pen, actually used by
It's the kitty and go-go lady again.
Yes, it
And
is.
she's still creepy.
continuously at any angle.
I am not reading this from a cue card.
Cartridge pressurized by nitrogen gas gives a positive ink feed to the ball.
If those still existed, if they still make those, I'd buy them right now.
It's a normal ballpoint pen.
Fisher Space Pen.
Does this show have a pen fetish?
And they
Hey,
have
people tell that stuff.
fingerprints and underwater.
And it makes the lips clean.
Engineered for astronauts, styled for executives. The Fisher Space McLennan's, located at 220 South State, has the world's largest inventory of pens and
Pens. What is it with this show and pens?
all makes of pens, pencils, and refills. McLennan's has also been servicing schools
By force.
with prints of the school emblem on either pens or pencils. Serving you in the writing instrument of your choice is McLennan's greatest pleasure. To figure out if you can be sure the place to look for it is at McLennan's, 220 South State.
McLennan's run out of business by the typewriter.
I ate pizza today,
Once again, it's Jenny too.
Jenny Crew. I just got pizza, guys. Cost me exactly $25 for the pizza and something else I bought.
It's not here, man.
Now everybody knows.
Hey, left town, Jenny Crew.
Okay.
Introduce you to
Hey, left town, dude, because you're a bitch. And an idiot.
I'm going to have you meet my brother Alex on the drum.
I can bake a cake. How long did you last, girl, huh?
My sister.
I last longer than you.
Sounds like guitar from the Shacks.
She did? Oh, you're going to jail.
I thought Twiggy
I
was
want to keep the
blonde.
show last longer than this
Tall.
one. How about more than one episode?
And I'm Jenny too.
I didn't know there was more than one.
Maybe. Still could be. I want to try it on you, Sybil.
Hey, instant double track.
Get a popsicle. Get
How convenient.
ready, Sybil? Oh, there's a timer.
Entire show, folks. No guests, no interviews, no sketches, no nothing.
Clear.
Next. I always knew that John Candy was one badass mother of an accordion player.
You are
No bases.
There we go.
Just like the Doors, man.
you are my
Crap. How to use the zoom on this thing again? Oh, hell with it.
don't you leave me, baby now. Don't you leave me, my baby now. Don't leave me, my baby now. You're my sweetheart now. Here we go.
Go where? To hell? Because I think we're already there. How much you want to bet these guys are playing this very tune right now at the Holiday Inn in Berwyn? Would it kill you to have a soloist? This is boring.
Hey guys, out here.
Well, you know, that's kind of the right.
Okay, so I was looking for a video from my mother. I found I was looking for. So yeah, I'm gonna eat my pizza. But I'm gonna eat my cheese sticks right now. I'll eat pizza later.
You are my baby now.
You're my little darling.
You're my baby now.
You're my Cupid doll.
You are my
Maybe watch some DOJ, guys. It's now time for lunch.
Dance, damn you, dance. Dance, damn it. Okay, I can't take this anymore. Next.
To the kids here from Northwestern University, okay? Let's get it.
Again? No. Oh, God. Actually, these guys aren't bad.
Wow, they're good.
Strong bass. They actually have a bass this time. Good tight playing. You know, if you look at that drummer real close, I swear that is Jimmy Chamberlain from the Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yes, it is. That is Jimmy Chamberlain from the friggin' Smashing Pumpkins. This doesn't seem so bad after all. You know, now that I think about it, alternative rock and polka really aren't all that incompatible. You know who would have made a good polka band? 9 Inch Nails. Hit it, Trent!
Well, that's kind of neat. It's like my car a little bit.
Oh, well, that does it for today's show.
Screen time is
easier together.
And Dale Earnhardt, the rookie, coming up on the inside of him now. Now there's the kid to watch. This killer. This video is sponsored by Atlanta Motor Speedway. To find out how you can get an exclusive deal on tickets for This video is sponsored by Atlanta Motor Speedway. To find out how you can get an exclusive deal on tickets for the next great Atlanta race, stay tuned until the end of the video and check out the description down below.
But today, the king of stock car racing, Richard Petty, will end his illustrious career.
As you look at the rest of the starting lineup, note that Jeff Gordon, who will be making his first Winston Cup start here today, will go from inside row number 11.
Jeff Gordon has been one of the fastest cars in practice. He has heard more.
Oh. Saw this video one time. A year later, after this actually happened, which was
There's a running joke on this channel that no matter the topic, it always comes back to the 1992 Hooters 500 at Atlanta Motor Speedway. And you know what? There's a lot of truth said in jest. There's so many storylines that begin or end here that any comprehensive history of NASCAR has to include at least a mention of this race. It was where one legend would end his journey and where another would begin his own, amidst the backdrop of NASCAR's craziest championship battle. A six-way fight between NASCAR's most popular driver, the sport's most beloved underdog, two sons of NASCAR royalty, the oldest winner in NASCAR history, and a journeyman who would soon turn into a legend himself, who has had to fight and claw for everything he's gotten up to this point. The 1992 Hooters 500 was more than just a great race. It was a true, honest-to-God passing of the torch moment. Never again would so many greats occupy the same asphalt for a single race ever again. And for two of the men in this race, it would be their last season finale before their untimely and tragic
those two both died
a few months into the future. Even at the time, everyone at Atlanta Motor Speedway on that sunny afternoon in November knew this was going to be a special moment. But not even in their wildest dreams did anyone there believe it would end up being as iconic as it was. There's a lot to cover here, so why don't we start
Queen
with
retired.
the in contention for the championship today. Back then, the champion was decided by whoever had the most points at the end of the year. The better you finished, the more points you got. And that was about it. There weren't any playoffs, eliminations, or cutoffs back then. Every race from first to last counted towards your total, save for the Bud shootout at the beginning of the year and the All-Star race. Even still, 6 drivers are within 113 points of one another at the start of the last race of the season. Pretty astonishing when you consider that the maximum number of points you could score in a race was 185. 3 of the 6 guys in this championship slugfest are long shots, but they're still mathematically in it. Harry Gant, Kyle Petty, and Mark Martin have all had pretty good years thus far. But thanks to the inconsistency of the top 3, they roll into Atlanta with a shot at taking home the Winston Cup this year. The bottom 3 have 2 wins apiece, but they've all taken different paths to get to this point. Let's start with the man furthest out, Mark Martin. An Arkansas native who burst onto the scene in the early 80s, Mark found success early on. In 1981, he started just 5 races and never qualified worse than 6th. In his 5th and final race that year, he finished 3rd, netting his first career top 5. The next year, he'd go full-time with a promising sponsorship deal, but his sponsor, Apache Stove, would end up never paying him a dime. He ran the full season anyway as an owner-driver, often out of his own pocket with no sponsor. He did this in hopes of claiming the Rookie of the Year award, along with the prize money and a trip to the year-end banquet, but Jeff Bodine would edge him out. Now in serious debt and struggling to live out his dreams of being a full-time race car driver, Mark Martin took any seat he could get. He described his 1982 and 83 struggles as being the most difficult years of his life, often finding it difficult to just get out of bed in the morning. He did well enough in his limited equipment that a Ford loyalist by the name of Jack Roush took notice and hired him to drive his flagship car, the now iconic number 6. In 1989, he'd score his first win, and the following year, he put together a stellar season with an average finish of a mind-boggling 5.4. But due to a questionable tech inspection penalty at Rockingham that docked him 46 points, he'd lose the championship to Dale Earnhardt by just 26 points. In 1991, he would struggle, but in 1992, he'd bounce back and score his 2 wins at Martinsville and at Charlotte. Rolling into Atlanta, if a miracle is to occur, Mark is a fairly good candidate. He won the pole for the spring race earlier this year and starts 4th today. He's good at the mile and a half, and his last win in the fall race at Charlotte has put him within striking distance of the championship, just 113 points out. And the only reason why he's in contention at all here today was because during his Charlotte win, the points leader at the time, Bill Elliott, broke a rear track bar mount, and Mark bit into his lead significantly. The most points you could score in a single race was 185, and 10 of those came from bonus points, 5 for leading a lap, and 5 more for the most laps. The minimum number of points you could score if you finished 43rd at 43 starts was 34 race in Atlanta has 41 starters, so that minimum points number becomes 40. Mark basically needs for everyone to heaven to crash out early. But as crazy as this season has been, that's not entirely out of the question. He'll run as hard as he can and shoot for the win and let the chips fall where they may. That gets us to fifth in line for the championship, Kyle Petty. 1 point behind Harry Gant and 98 points back of our points leader, Davey Allison. He's a long way out too, but he's in a much more favorable position than Mark. He merely needs the top 3 to wreck out and finished 1 position ahead of Harry Gant to win it all. The son of the sport's greatest driver of all time, Richard Petty, Kyle has had to live in his father's shadow since day one, constantly being compared to him. With little to no success under the Petty Enterprises banner, he left for the Wood Brothers team in the 80s, scored his first victory, and then joined up with an upstart team in Felix Sabates Racing. And he's been lighting up the charts ever since. He has a slew of W's to his name now, and he's within striking distance of the top 3 should something happen today. Speaking of Kyle Petty's old man, it's Richard Petty's last race ever in the Cup Series today. At age 55, the greatest NASCAR driver of all time is going to hang it up and call it a career. The distinction of being the greatest of all time isn't at all a stretch for Richard Petty either. Winner of 200 races in NASCAR's top divisions, he almost doubles the win total of the runner-up. And his stats seem almost like the stuff of mythology, where you would expect figures in the double digits, he has triple-digit numbers. Where you would be impressed by triple digits, he has quadruple digits. Any look at the NASCAR record books, however long or short, is going to include the name Richard Petty a staggering number of times. He has more than earned his nickname, the King. But the last decade has not been kind to Richard. The racing gods care little of what royal family you belong to. His 200th and final victory came in 1984, and he's been winless for 8 years. His finishes have left a lot to be desired, and earlier this year he led his final laps in the Pepsi 400 at Daytona. But through all the monotony of the late 80s and early 90s, what kept him showing up race after race? Well, according to him, he just thought it was tons of fun, and he'd keep racing until it was no longer fun anymore. But after a few horrendous accidents and DNFs due to fatigue, even he realized it was time to hang it up by the time 1991 came to a close. But just leaving the sport outright didn't sit well with him, and it wouldn't feel right leaving all the fans that had supported him throughout the years so suddenly. So he announced the 1992 Farewell Tour. At every race that year, he'd participate in special events and give every NASCAR fan the opportunity to meet with him and sign autographs while he was still a competitor. It was an absolute hit, and it was more than befitting of a king of NASCAR. While royalty will make its final laps here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, we still have a champion to crown. Although age has caught up with Petty, it seems to have turned a blind eye to Harry Gant, who is having one of the best years of his career at age 52. He's got a couple of wins to his credit this season, and earlier this year he claimed a record that still stands to this day. The oldest driver to ever win a Cup race. At 52 years and 219 days old, handsome Harry Gant won the Champion Spark Plugs 400 at Michigan International Speedway, and inadvertently scored Oldsmobile's final Cup Series victory as well. What made his feat even more impressive was that he had already captured the oldest NASCAR winner title back in 1991 at Talladega, and then just kept adding to it. He later went into a tear in September of that year where he won every single race of that month, 4 in a row, earning him the nickname Mr. September. Of our 6-man championship hunt, Gant leads the rear order, being just 97 points behind the leader and 1 point ahead of Kyle Petty. If any of the back 3 are to pull off a miracle here today, the seemingly ageless Harry Gant is a good choice. However, he's come down with the flu this weekend and is looking to get a replacement driver into the car as soon as he can. By rule, whoever starts the car gets credited with the finishing position. So his game plan is to start the race, turn a few laps, and as soon as they can get a replacement squared away, they'll hop out of the car. With the long shots out of the way, we can now get to the 3 men with a quote-unquote realistic shot at the championship. I say realistic in quotes because this season has been about as far
That's kinda neat.
reality as one could imagine. The man sitting third in the points, 40 behind our leader, is Bill Elliott. Far and away NASCAR's most popular driver, Bill has been a fan favorite since the early 80s and has won just about everything there is to win twice over. You name it, Daytona 500s, Southern 500s, $1 million paychecks. He's got multiples of just about everything on his resume, except championships. He scored his first title in 1988 after a slew of incredible seasons that included all sorts of shattered records. At the conclusion of his less than stellar 1991 season, he would cut ties with his longtime partners over at Melling Racing and would drive for Junior Johnson's flagship number 11 team. Junior Johnson was one of the greatest car owners of all time, so him netting the sport's most popular driver seemed like a match made in heaven, and early on it lived up to the hype. They didn't do so hot in the Daytona 500 opener, but then they won the next 4 races in a row and put everybody on notice. They'd have an extremely solid summer stretch where Bill would never finish outside the top 14. and gained the points lead despite never having won a race during that time span either. Even still, exiting the summer stretch, Bill added to his points lead to such an extent that people were all but preemptively starting to etch his name onto the Winston Cup trophy. The fact that he now sits 40 points out of the lead in third going into the final race of the season would have seemed all but impossible in September. So what happened? Well, Bill's October run was an utter disaster, finishing 30th or worse in 3 of the last 5 races. His lone saving grace was a 4th place finish in the 3rd from last race at Rockingham. If he could have pulled off a decent finish in the penultimate race at Phoenix, he'd still maintain his points lead. But the brutal Arizona sun was just too much for his car to handle, and he had overheating issues all day. Junior Johnson was a notoriously tough car owner. He was livid with his team, and maybe the added pressure he put them under to perform in the closing weeks was causing them to crack. Nevertheless, Bill won the Spring Atlanta race earlier this year, and now all he has to do is win it again, lead the most laps, and hope Davey finishes 6th or worse. Sitting in 2nd place in the points is quite possibly the biggest long shot of all, Alan Kulwicki. Although he resides just 30 points behind Davey Allison, better than anybody else at the track.
I'll go to some racing. We'll do some gaming later. Yeah.
Is one of the most improbable things anyone could have ever imagined. If someone tells you they thought Alan Kulwicki was a championship contender at the start of the 1992 season, they're a liar. He was not only an outsider from Wisconsin, but a throwback to the way things used to be as well. He was an owner-driver and had complete autonomy over the team. In 1986, he drove for team owner Bill Terry before Terry would abruptly back out midway through the season. Alan pretty much sold everything he had except for his pickup truck and bought the team outright, running it almost as a one-man operation with just 2 full-time employees and a roster made up of volunteers and cast-offs from other race teams. He built up the team over time, and his best championship finish has been 8th up to this point. But usually he found himself barely hovering inside the top 15. He had just 3 wins in his entire career going into the 1992 season. And going into the 1991 season, he didn't even have a sponsor. But thanks to the title sponsor of this race, Hooters, that all changed. Hooters had sponsored a car that didn't qualify for the 1991 Atlanta Spring Race. So they got in touch with Alan for a 1-race deal as they wanted somebody to fly their colors at their hometown track. Alan won the pole for the race and finished a solid 8th. He and the owner of Hooters went out for dinner that night and signed a long-term contract on the back of a napkin, and the rest was history. Now funded through 1992, Alan got it in his head that he could make a run at the championship. He floated in the top 10 in points until week 6, when he seized an opportunity. The top 2 in points at the time, Bill Elliott and Davey Allison, both wreck out, and Alan straight up dominates the race, scoring the maximum allowable 185 points. He spent the rest of the year ripping off top 5s and top 10s, along with a second win at Pocono, where the points leaders would wreck out again. Exiting the summer stretch, he's kept the points leader at the time, Bill Elliott, within arm's reach. But at Dover, it seems like his championship hopes have gone up in smoke. He crashes out of the race and finishes 34th, while Bill and Davey finish 2nd and 4th, respectively. Alan was ready to call it quits, but the team rallied around him, and the DNF galvanized the team, and they came back with a vengeance, scoring 3 top 5s in the next 5 races, with no finish worse than 12th. That, combined with Bill Elliott's bad luck, put him at 2nd in the standings, poised to win an unthinkable championship. And if he does so, he will have overcome the biggest points deficit in the final 5 races in NASCAR history to make that happen. If the other 5 men in this hunt have had to endure hardships on their road to the Cup this year, then our points leader, Davey Allison, has had to go through hell on earth. He kicked off the season with a win at the Daytona 500, instantly nabbing the points lead. He would finish in the top 4 every race until Bristol, where he would wreck out. But he didn't just tear up a car. He cracked a few ribs in the process. He could barely get out of his junked car. Next week at North Wilkesboro, he put on an NFL-style flak jacket and win the race even as his legs began to cramp up. And the next week after that, he totaled another car at Martinsville and compounded his cracked ribs with a bruised lung. He'd bounce right back again and win at Talladega. The man could just not be stopped. For the rest of the year, Davey would trade each win with some sort of horrific crash and injury to go with it. In the Pocono race that Alan won, Davey was spun out, got airborne, and flipped so violently that the G-forces burst open blood vessels in his eyes and mangled his right arm. Even still, he'd start the next race at Talladega 1 week out and get subbed out for Bobby Hillin after a fortunately timed rain caution. But all of that pales in comparison to what he had to go through at Michigan in August. There, his little brother, Clifford Allison, died in a practice crash for the preliminary 200-mile race. With a heavy heart, Davey strapped into his own car and wheeled it to a 5th-place finish. Late in the year, when Bill Elliott's car would overheat at Phoenix, Davey won the race and reclaimed the points lead for the first time since the summer stretch. And that sets the stage for the last race of the season. 6 paths filled with triumph and tragedy, beating the odds and setting new records have given us this insane six-way battle where anything could happen. And the sport's greatest driver of all time will put in his final laps. And all while this is happening, and seemingly unknown to anybody at the time, a young upstart from Indiana is making his very first start, Jeff Gordon. Having made his name on the dirt tracks of the Midwest driving sprint cars, it didn't take long for his talents to be sniffed out by NASCAR team owners. Bill Davis scooped him up first, and he blew up the second tier series this year by winning 11 poles, 10 top fives, and 3 wins. But when it came time to start pondering a move to the top division, Rick Hendrick made the move first. He expanded from a 2-car operation with his flagship number 5 piloted by Ricky Rudd and the number 25 piloted by Ken Schrader to a 3-car team with Jeff Gordon rolling out in the very first iteration of his now iconic Rainbow Warriors paint scheme sponsored by DuPont and the number 24. Nobody knows it yet here, but this will be as historical a moment as any other event in this race. Jeff Gordon will race full-time in 1993 and score his first wins in 1994. From there, he'll go on to win a total of 93 times, collect 4 championships and 3 Daytona 500 crowns. He is easily one of the greatest NASCAR drivers of all time, and this is where it all started. A one-off race as an expansion team for Rick Hendrick, where for the first and only time, he will share the same asphalt as Richard Petty. It's a huge honor, and even today, the significance of that one race is not lost on him. And now we can finally get to the race itself. This will be a 328-lap, 500-mile race at the 1.54-mile Atlanta Motor Speedway, which has been the site of the series finale since 1987. With races in the early spring and late fall, Atlanta races are usually chilly affairs, with tires struggling to maintain grip on the 24-degree banks. Starting on the pole for this race is Rick Mast, and on his outside is Brett Bodine. Between them, they have just their names, and since the possible champions may be playing it safe for points today, both of them see an opportunity to snag a win.
Oh yeah, I remember the first lap, the crash.
Goes to hell. At the conclusion of lap 1, Brett Bodine narrowly leads, but as Rick Mast battles back on the high side going into turn 1, the air on Bodine's rear spoiler is redirected by Mast's car running so close. That, and a nudge by the LCU from behind, causes Bodine to go around and take Mast with him. The two careen into the wall and slide out the banks, right in front of all 6 championship-eligible drivers. Mark Martin, Harry Gant, and Kyle Petty make it through easily enough. But Bill Elliott and Alan Quickie have to do some in-car wizardry to make it through. Davey Allison, on the other hand, has a torn-up left-rear quarter panel. So long as they can get the quarter panel flattened back out, they'll be fine. Otherwise, air will get sucked into the trunk cavity of the car and act like a parachute. Davey's crew, headed by Larry Mack and Joey Knuckles, get the car squared away and they begin their journey again. Atlanta is far from his best track. His average finish here in 12 attempts is 21.5. That's abysmal. He's hoping his 30-point cushion will help out, but now restarting way behind at one of Bill and Alan's best tracks, Davey and the 28 crew got their work cut out for them. On the restart, the lead changes hands between Dale Earnhardt, Ernie Irvan, and Jeff Bodine, as Bill and Alan run 5th and 6th respectively. Davey cuts his way through the field, but on lap 65, he gets a little help from an unlikely source. Michael Waltrip spins coming out of turn 2, and the top 3 in points come in for tires and fuel during the caution. Alan and Davey are pitted right next to each other, and the camera turns on them just in time to see Alan leave his pit stall and break first gear. The championship hopeful immediately throws a car into 4th and has his team push start the car. The same thing happened to him just a few races back at Charlotte, and they managed to finish 2nd there. Alan will just have to keep it in 4th gear for the rest of the day so the broken gear doesn't get moved around and potentially destroy the entire transmission. His pit exit time
Hello?
Despite his sluggish pit exit, Alan
restarts. Oh, I'm not again, darn it. You're ringing me.
Alan and Bill run 1-2 for 20 laps.
I heard someone ring. I thought I was ringing.
Between them 5 times. They both know they have a shot to win the race and the title.
I'm going to play some GTA in about 3 minutes. I might play some GTA. This is all I'm going to do some GTA.
Pitches up to them though and makes a daring 3-wide move to claim the lead. He'll hold on to it for the next 3 laps before a stalled car brings out another yellow. As the leaders come in for pit stops, Davey stays out, snags 5 points for leading a lap,